Hello folks, welcome back to the shop and to the beginning of what I believe is going to be the last video in the brandy Cob modification that we're doing for the Artful Codger. So this is where we left it off last time. Haven't done anything since last you saw the pipe. I talked to you a bit about the possibility of maybe thinning down this walnut piece a bit. And to be honest with you, I'm still torn. About I'm about 50% on thinning it down and about 50% on leaving it. So I've decided that I'm going to leave it. This is the shape that the wood wants to be, as strange as that sounds. It just feels right to me. It's got a fairly good hand feel. It's nice to rest your thumb across that piece there. I know it's not really traditional, but then again, neither are brandy cobs, and I think this is going to look best as is. I'm afraid that if I thin it down too much more, it's going to start to look a little bit odd. It's going to be kind of bulbous at this end and just look like something that was added as an afterthought. I think having it this way, it just flows a little bit more organically, and you know, I may regret that, but that's the decision that I've made. So I'm gonna leave it like this for now. And of course, you know, it's only wood, so we could always come back and shave it down a bit later if we decide that it just looks terrible. But for now, we're gonna basically say the pipe is, quote, finished up to this point. So the only thing remaining to do here is internal. You know, getting rid of this extension that's in there and mudding the inside. Here it's all finishing, and of course there's the actual gluing together of the pieces, but the shaping and staining and all of that is essentially done. The next thing to do then is going to be to make the stem, and then we'll come back and do all of that sort of fitting and shaping, not fitting and shaping, gluing and final fit and final finish. So the very next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to cut the slot. And to do that, I'm going to use this small little Dremel tool. It's just one of these Dremel discs that's been ground down to the right size. And I will bring that in right where the air hole is right now and make a slot, which will ultimately be widened out and funneled and so on. But this will give us the beginning of that shape. I'll then go ahead and tape this up the way I had it previously for shaping, and I'll bring you back once that's done before I start doing any of the final shaping. Okay, I wanted to show you before I tape this what the slot actually looks like at this juncture, and hopefully you can pick that up. So it's not terribly deep. It's just sort of demarcating the width of the slot, and then we'll be using files to widen that out and funnel, well, not to widen it, but to funnel it to that dimension so that the airflow is appropriate. And yeah, we will actually widen it out a bit, just to make it a normal dimension. But that's the slot cut, and I wanted to show you that because the next step, of course, is going to be to put tape over that, so you wouldn't be able to see it if I taped this up. So we're going to use the slot as a guide for our tape to go on at the right angle, and if we do that correctly, the slot, I'm just sort of using my nail to press the tape into the slot a little bit, and this is probably going to be very difficult for you to see, but basically the tape is centered over the slot. And now when we bring it down the sides, we know that tape is basically outlining the airway for us. Now, the reason I like to do that is I do not want to carve into the airway, as I mentioned before. So now I know when I'm removing material up here and up and here, as long as I do not go past this tape, I should be safe. Now the truth is the airway is wider down here, but I know I'm not going to be taking that much off down here because I'm going to be narrowing this as I go down. So as long as I'm at this end, not in danger of cutting into the airway, I'll be in good shape. So we've got that marked on both sides. I'm now going to put, I might as well, since I've already got you on here, I might as well show you the rest of this. I'm going to put a piece right around here, right at the end, and there's two reasons for that. The one is kind of just an obvious thing to keep the tape from peeling off, the tape that I've just applied. So this is just going to secure it. The other reason I'm doing this is that I do want a small bit of this stem to remain that diameter. I don't want to cut into that part. So I'll begin tapering right at the edge here, right at the edge of this tape, rather than at the edge of the stem. And that will taper down. The other thing that I'm going to do is mark how thick I want the button to be. And, well, not actually how thick I want the button to be, but how much I want to reserve to make sure that I'm not taking off too much. And I'm just going to again do that with some tape. This is not at all an accurate measurement. I'm just going to basically triple the size of this safety zone here. And that'll give me plenty of material to work with when I'm forming the button. I'm sorry, watching me apply tape is probably about as interesting as watching me sand, but there's somebody out there enjoying this, I'm sure. I know that because when I watch videos like this, I often think to myself, why am I watching this? Usually I think to myself, why am I watching this when I could be in my shop doing something productive? But hey, there's plenty of time. Okay, that's a lot thicker than I need the button to be, obviously, but it just gives me a warning when I get to that point. So now I can use the belt sander to begin to bring this down. And for the most part, I am going to narrow down the width a little bit here because this is sort of fishtailing out a little bit too much. Not terribly, but just a little bit too much. So I'll narrow this a little bit. I will taper this down to the button. And then at that point, I will switch to files and do everything else by hand, because I do want to have as much control over the shape of this as I possibly can. So ultimately, these edges will all be rounded. So we'll have basically an oval cross-section, with the slot in it. And then we'll widen out the slot, form the button with the files, and at that point it's just going to be a matter of polishing. So I'll get to work on that, and I'll bring you back probably after I do the rough sanding, and then at various points while I'm filing, just to show you how the shape of the stem evolves. So I'll be back soon. Okay folks, so we've got a lot of the rough shaping of the stem done at this point, so I wanted to bring you back and show you the progress that I've made. So the first thing I did was to sort of slope off both sides and try to do that as evenly as possible, and bring those down to a point that was wide enough that I knew I was protecting this button. Once I had gotten it to that point, I taped off the end here, which is essentially what is going to form the button, and the depth of this piece, so the distance from here to here, is approximately going to be dictated by the width of this tape. I then used a square file to cut a sort of proto button. This is obviously not the final shape, but it's starting to take shape now. So those slots are sort of the beginning of where the button's going to be. And now what I can do is I can again go back to the belt sander and bring this curve down to this point here, so I can get rid of this excess material pretty quickly. From that point on, it's going to be all hand shaping. So it's just going to be that one little bit of rough sanding, and then we'll switch over to files. The files, I don't know if I've shown you before the files that I use. I mean, this is just a basic metal file, and these are very inexpensive files that I get from Harbor Freight. You don't need, well, I shouldn't say that. I mean, good quality files are always a good thing, but filing acrylics and vulcanite, if you're doing fast, rough work, these files work just fine, and they're relatively inexpensive. So you can get a set of these for, I think, like $12 or something. And then the file that I really like for working with vulcanite are these. They're actually called Vulcrylic files. These are made for people that make wax models. And so it's actually a wax file, and you can find these on Amazon searching for volcrylic wax files. They're also inexpensive. I think I got a set of 2 of these for $8, and they're sharp. They work really well in this kind of material. And then of course sandpaper, which is I believe the pipe restorer's best friend. Okay, so I will do some more work on that, and I will bring you back when we're much closer to having a finished pipe stem. So we still have a ways to go here, but you can see we are starting to look much more now like a pipe stem. Obviously the button's still square and ugly, but the overall shape is starting to take shape, if you will. And you know, you can see this is still very rough sanded and not at all close to final, but the shaping is coming along very well. The next thing I'm going to do now, I no longer need these because I'm not going to be thinning this out very much more, so they've served their purpose. So I'll remove the tape at this point, and then I'm going to begin sanding, and the sanding will allow me to refine the shape a little bit and just get rid of lots of the bumps and ridges that the files left. But overall we're getting very, very close now. So I'll do that. The other thing I'm going to do is shape the button with the files. And I'll do all that and bring you back when I'm getting ready to start to open up the slot. Well, hello friends, we're back, and we've done quite a bit of sanding, shaping on this now, and I think it's actually very close to its final shape. As we sand it down to the finer grits, we'll still be refining things a little bit, but by and large this is the shape the stem is going to be, and of course it's ultimately going to be a bent stem. You know, we've begun to shape the button. It's still a little bit rough, but the basic idea is there. And the next step is going to be to improve the airway here, basically funnel this opening a bit and widen it out a little bit. And to do that, this is the tool of choice for me. This is a little saw file that you can just insert in here and then pull out, and it will gradually allow me to create a nice funnel shape in here that'll allow the air to sort of circulate before it comes out. And this tool is actually really nice. I got this from Vermont Freehand at the recommendation of Pipe Leisure, so thanks. I really appreciate that. This has been a wonderful addition to my toolbox. So I'm going to go on and do that. It's actually very slow and boring, so I'm not going to film it, but I will bring you back when it's done. Okay, so the stem is now, it hasn't been buffed yet. You can still see it's still a dull black, but it has been sanded up to 600 grit at this point. So all that remains to do here now is going to be the final buffing. You can see I have funneled that air hole out quite a bit, and that should provide a nice open draw. And all in all, I think we can call the stem completed now. So you get a much better feel for what the pipe's going to look like. Of course, there is going to be a bend put in this. It'll probably be a bend fairly far up the stem just to sort of allow it to hang. And we're ready now to move on to sort of the final piecing this all together and finishing it. So I think the first thing that I'm going to do is, or the next thing that I'm going to do, is I'm going to put some tung oil onto the walnut, and that will serve two purposes. It will help bring out the grain a bit more, and it will also darken the wood a little bit and help with the match to the bowl coloring that we chose. So that's a fairly simple process. It just brushes on, you leave it for a bit of time, and then you wipe it off. Once that's done, the next thing to do is going to be to permanently attach this. And to do that, I will be using an epoxy, and the epoxy will not only help to obviously permanently affix this, but it's also going to fill in some of the small gaps that we have there. So I'll do the area that contacts this this tenon. Sorry about the dog. That'll be done with just straight epoxy, but then I will also mix up some epoxy with some walnut dust, and I'll use that to fill in this area here that's going to be making contact against the sides of the cob, so that when this is pushed together, that will sort of fill in the space. We'll allow that to set up for a bit, and then I will come in with an X-Acto knife and trim that before it sets completely. And at that point I'll bring you back and explain the next steps. Well folks, I am happy to say that we are at the finish line now. So we're not done yet, but we're very close. Everything is glued together now. This is all one solid piece, and so far everything is looking pretty pipe-like. This has been buffed. I have not yet put any carnauba wax on it, so that is just the polished wood and the polished ebonite. So the stem looks good. The wood has turned out nice. Again, it's showing up lighter on the camera really than it is. The match here is not that bad. I mean, you can tell that it's a corn cob and then a piece of wood. It's, you know, that's what you're going to have when you do a modified cob. But it looks fairly good in person, and hopefully the camera will show up a little bit better, because it's looking a little light and reddish here, and that's just simply not the case. I have not yet drilled out the inside, so I still have to drill out, and when I say that, what I mean is this little extension that I left in place here, which is part of this walnut bit. I'm just going to bring the same bit that I used to drill the hole out originally, which is a 3/4 inch. I'll just bring that down again all the way to the bottom. That'll get rid of that. And then I'll use pipe mud to build this up and to make the bottom and to center the draft hole. So I have to still do that, and I do want to put a little bend in this. I'm not going to put well, it'll be probably like a half, 3/4 bend, something like that. But it'll start right around here, so it's not going to be very far down. I just want enough for it to sort of hang from the mouth nicely, and I think that'll better complement this relatively straight portion. I mean, the plan was, of course, to get this to curve up more, but it just didn't work out that way. At any rate, we are very, very close, and while when we're done it may not look exactly like a brandy, it will certainly look like a pipe. So let me do these last few steps, and then I will bring you back with the final product. Well folks, we're done. We have here the final product, the completed brandy cob for the Artful Codger. His reward for winning my 200 sub giveaway contest that was held back in April. And once again, I really appreciate Ben's patience in waiting for me to get around to doing this project, and then waiting for me to actually complete the project for him. Ben, I hope you like it. I hope you enjoy the way it turned out. Now, did we wind up with a pipe here that will be mistaken for brandy? Absolutely not. This is this is clearly some sort of a Frankenstein pipe, but it's reminiscent of a brandy. The idea is there, and it's a Cob modification, and it's just supposed to be a fun take on a pipe shape. So I hope, Ben, you can appreciate that. The last things we did before calling this complete was to drill out that internal chamber, the tobacco chamber, and then use some pipe mud on the bottom to bring the bottom up to the right level, and put a hole there in the center, so an extension of the draft hole. So this will smoke nicely, pretty much ready to be packed. Actually, that's not entirely true. This has to sit for a few days, and I will leave this sit for about 2 days before I pack it up and send it. Sorry, Ben, but that's important because I don't want that shaking loose during the transit. The other thing that I will do before I send it out is I will get pipe cleaners and alcohol and clean out the airway. I've already put a pipe cleaner all the way through. I had a pipe cleaner in when I was bending the stem, and you know, it's a straight shot. It's easy to get a pipe cleaner all the way in, but I want to make sure that I've got all the vulcanite dust and wood dust and everything else out of the airway, so that the first smoke on this will be enjoyable and not a mouthful of powdered ebonite, which would not be pleasant. And that's about it. So I'll do those, let it sit for 2 days, clean out the inside, and off it goes to the Artful Codger. So I really appreciate if you've watched this whole series, or if you've just watched this one installment of the series. I appreciate your time. I hope you've enjoyed it. I've sure enjoyed this project. It was a lot of fun, and I learned a lot doing it. And you know, I really do appreciate your subscriptions, your likes, your comments, whether they be positive or negative. I like the feedback. So if you see something I did that you would do differently, I'd love to hear about it. If you have any questions, feel free to let me know. You can drop me an email, or just ask in a comment, or a private message. So beyond that, I will say thank you once again. I'll ask you all to take care of yourselves, and I will look forward to talking to you again very soon. Goodbye now.